It's week 9 of the Blue Collar Football League season, and this week we have a rematch of last year's Western Conference Championship game between the Cincinnati Dukes and the Cin-City Buccaneers. The team split 2 games in the regular season last year, including a overtime win by the Bucs, 18-12. The Bucs then went on to run away with a 27-12 win in the playoffs on their way to the BCFL title. This year, the two teams are in different conferences. The Dukes are looking to keep pace with the Columbus Gladiators for the top seed in the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, in the Western Conference, the Bucs are trying to catch the Southern Ohio Blaze for first place in the Blue Division. The rivalry got off to a fast start, as on the opening kickoff, Darion Brown, who scored the game-winning touchdown in last year's championship game for the Buccaneers, fielded the kick and brought it out 44 yards to midfield for the Dukes. The Dukes followed with one first down, but 2 false start penalties, and this sack by Joe Willis led to a 2nd and 30 for the Dukes. That's when Kamani Murray looked deep. He found Justin Cornwall, and Jaquan Jackson was just able to drag him down after a 44-yard gain down to the Bucs' 11-yard line. The Dukes managed just 5 more yards, however, and on 4th and 5, Murray's pass for Brown was incomplete, ending the early threat. The next 4 drives all ended in punts, including this one by Aubrey Harris that rolled all the way down to the 1-yard line of the Buccaneers. The Bucs resorted to trickery to get themselves some breathing room. Tony Davis with a lateral to Kurt Johnson. He fired it quickly out to CJ Talley, and the Bucs had picked up 13 yards. On the next play, Greg Johnson found a big hole on the right side and gained 16 yards, and the Bucs were already out to the 30-yard line. Another first down moved the Bucs out to the 45, but then Davis bought himself some time. He looked for Deion Johnson, but Kayvon Burnett stepped in front of the pass and picked it off, brought it back to the Bucs' 41-yard line. Then, on the first play after the 2-minute warning, Murray went deep. Brown was open behind the defense, and he was in for a 39-yard touchdown. The 2-point attempt was no good, but the Dukes still led 6-0. On the Bucs' second play, it was Davis looking deep. He found CJ Talley, who hauled it in before finally being brought down at the 12-yard line for a 42-yard gain. On the next play, Davis fired a strike into the end zone. Talley hauled it in for a 12-yard touchdown. The Bucs' 2-point conversion was no good, and after 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of the quarter, the score was tied 6-6 at halftime. The Buccaneers got the ball to open the second half, and facing a 3rd and 5, Davis found Dante Jackson. He worked his way through the Dukes defense for 31 yards before finally being brought down at the 23. Davis then connected with CJ Talley on a 9-yard pass that set up another first down at the 11. But on 3rd and 3 from the 4, Davis's pass was tipped by Sean Sullivan and picked off by Leandre Pope. And this time was the Dukes had avoided a threat on the opening drive of the half. A punt gave the ball back to the Bucs late in the third quarter, and that's when Dante Jackson took a jet sweep and picked up 10 yards down to the Dukes 28. In the fourth quarter, the Bucs faced a 4th and 9, and Davis's pass to CJ Talley picked up exactly that, giving Cin-City a first down at the 18. That's where the drive stalled, and after a couple of penalties, Bradley Cullen's 33-yard field goal attempt was no good, and the score remained 6-6 with about 10 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. The Dukes responded with a long drive that was kept alive early when, on 3rd and 7, Murray found Justin Cornwall, who picked up the first down. On the next play, it was Murray finding Tay White, who was touched down after a 12-yard gain. And facing another 3rd and 7, Murray found Darion Brown. He looped around the Bucs defense for 16 yards into Cin-City territory. A penalty moved the Dukes into the red zone, and then Brent Robinson burst forward down to the 5-yard line, setting up a 1st and goal. but the Dukes could advance no further, and on 4th and goal, Murray was able to avoid the sack, but his pass was incomplete, and after 14 plays and 71 yards, the Dukes came away with no points. Both teams punted, and that left the Bucks with one last chance in regulation with under a minute remaining. Teo Cook started the drive first with an 8-yard gain, and then with a 12-yard pickup out to the 50-yard line. With time left for just one last play, Dante Jackson took a short pass. He kept the play alive as long as he could, but was finally brought down at the 29-yard line. And for the second year in a row, the Bucks and the Dukes were going to overtime. As a reminder, the BCFL follows NFL rules, so both teams will get a possession during the 10-minute overtime period unless the first team scores a touchdown. After that, the game becomes sudden death, with the first team to score winning unless the 10 minutes run out. During the critical coin toss, it was the Dukes who won and would get the first possession. It looked like it might be a quick overtime, as on the opening kickoff, Dominic Williams fielded the kick, burst through the middle of the Bucks defense, slipped through 2 tackles, and just as he was about to take off, was tripped up. But still, the Dukes had the ball at the Bucks' 38-yard line. On the very next play, Murray dropped back the pass, and Ontario Williams was there to pick it off. He had some blockers, but he was brought down at the 46-yard line. Still, now the Buccaneers had a chance to win in overtime. On second down, Davis found Marcus Commodore for an 8-yard gain. And on 3rd and 1, Davis went to Dante Jackson. He picked up 9 yards for a first down at the 28. That's as far as the Bucks would get, however. And on 4th down, they opted for a 45-yard field goal to win the game. The kick was tipped, however, and while Marquise Jones fielded it in the end zone, he never made it out, and therefore the play resulted in a touchback, giving the Dukes the ball at the 20-yard line. On the Dukes' next play from scrimmage, Williams took a handoff. He worked his way around the right side and picked up 16 yards. 2 plays later, Murray hit Brown, who picked up 14 yards, giving the Dukes the ball at the 50-yard line. Facing 3rd and 4, Murray was able to get the ball to Cornwall, who got 16 yards down to the 28. That's when the Dukes turned back to Williams. He burst ahead to the 20-yard line. He was fighting for more when Edon pried the ball loose. Ontario Williams was there to pounce on it, and Cin-City had the ball back at the 15-yard line. 4 short passes set the Bucks up with a 1st and 10 at the 43. That's when Davis lofted a pass, and Nick Johnson picked it off. He went down the left sideline, slipped through 1 tackle, tripped up, backed up, was pushed forward by his own player, and finally brought down, but the Dukes had the ball at the 13-yard line with under 30 seconds remaining. A false start moved the Dukes back 5 yards, and on their first attempt to win the game, Murray found Tay White, but Vince Rayford was there to force him out of bounds, causing the incomplete pass. On 2nd down, Murray looked for Justin Cornwall, but the pass was too high. With time left for one last play, Murray quickly got rid of it, but the pass was too long for Tay White, and that was it. That ends the game. It's a tie, 6-6. The tie was the 3rd in the BCFL and the 1st since 2017, when the Butler County Broncos and Cincinnati Gators tied 18-18. This time, all the points were scored about a minute apart in the 2nd quarter. For the Dukes, Darion Brown had 4 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown, while Justin Cornwall had 5 catches for 69 yards, as Kamani Murray completed 10 of 26 passes for 167 yards. For the Bucks, C.J. Talley had 6 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown, while Dante Jackson had 7 catches for 96 yards. Antonio Davis completed 20 of 37 passes for 208 yards. He completed passes to 8 different receivers, including 4 named Johnson. Defensively, for the Dukes, Sean Sullivan had 11 tackles, while Marquise Jones had 8 tackles, including a sack and a pass breakup. Dominic Williams had 4 tackles on defense, 32 yards rushing on offense, and the 49-yard kick return to start overtime. Daniel Ferguson led the Cin-City defense with 9 tackles, while Joe Willis had 6 tackles, including 2 sacks. Ontario Williams had an interception and a fumble recovery, both coming in overtime. The Dukes had 4 drives inside the red zone that did not come away with any points, while the Buccaneers had 2 drives inside the 20 without scoring, as well as 2 others inside the 30 that resulted in no points. Earlier, across town, the Southern Ohio Blaze hosted the Indiana Cutters, looking to avenge their only loss of the season. On Southern Ohio's second drive, the Blaze faced a 3rd and 6, but Maurice Levet rolled out and was able to find G-Mon McNair for 23 yards. 2 plays later, Levet hooked up with Tyreek Brooks for 11 yards, down to the 19-yard line. And then it was Levet to McNair again, this time for a 19-yard touchdown, the first of many for Levet on the day, and the Blaze led 7-0 after 1 quarter. In the second quarter, the Blaze faced another 3rd down, 3rd and 8, when Levet went long and found Kenyon Thomas for 26 yards into Cutters territory. On the next play, Vontae Johnson took a short pass and went 13 yards down to the 26. Then it was a handoff to Johnson. He burst ahead for 12 yards inside the red zone. And again, it was Levet to McNair, this time a 14-yard touchdown that had the Blaze up 13-0. About the only thing that didn't go right for the Blaze was this extra point off the upright as they rolled to a 52-7 win against the Cutters. Recapping all the scores in the league this week, the Dukes and the Buccaneers played to the 6-6 tie. Meanwhile, the Blaze had the big 52-7 win against the Cutters. The Tornadoes ended the Gladiators' undefeated hopes, winning 14-12 on the road. The Warriors gained a forfeit win against the Mustangs, and the Spartans picked up a win against the Huskies, while the Cardinals were off this week. Looking at the standings, the race for the top seed in the Eastern Conference got a little closer. The Gladiators and Dukes are still first place in their divisions, but now the Gladiators are just a half game ahead of the Dukes for that number 1 seed. In the Red Division, the Warriors remain second at 3-5, and the Mustangs are third at 1-7, while the Spartans are behind the Dukes at 4-4, and the Huskies in last at 0-9. In the Western Conference, the tightest division is the Red Division, where the Cutters and Tornadoes are now tied at 4-4, with the Cardinals just a game back at 3-5. Meanwhile, in the Blue Division, the Blaze now have a path to winning the division at 6-1, while the Buccaneers sit at 4-2-1. Checking out this week's schedule, the Buccaneers now travel to face the Gladiators in a rematch of last year's championship game. Meanwhile, the Cutters and Tornadoes face off for first place in the Western Conference's Red Division. The Warriors and Spartans play with the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference on the line. The Blaze are at the Cardinals. The Mustangs will pick up a win against the Huskies, and the Dukes are off this week. And finally, a look at the owners' poll, where there was quite a bit of a shakeup. For the first time all year, the Gladiators are not at the top after their loss. Instead, it is the Southern Ohio Blaze, who are now the number 1 team in the BCFL. The Gladiators slipped 1 spot to 2, and while the Dukes picked up an extra first-place vote, they did slip 1 spot to number 3. The Buccaneers were one of the few teams to stand pat. They are still at 4. The Tornadoes, with their win over the Gladiators, moved up 2 spots from 7 to 5, while the Cutters dropped 1 from 5 to 6. The Spartans also dropped a spot from 6 to 7, while the final 4 teams remained the same: the Cardinals at 8, Warriors 9, Mustangs 10, and Huskies 11.